The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I am the Director of Advocacy here at Children's Health Defense. Today, we are going to be talking about the Communication for All bill with John Gilmore. Helen Keller's family is coming out supporting spellers and other individuals with disabilities. After I have John on, we also have a New York update on all things New York and Albany, as yucky as it is. And then we have Stephanie Lucretio is doing a segment on bee pollinators and EMR wireless radiation and the harms, what's happening to our bee population. That's going to be a fantastic interview. As always, we have a great show. Stick around for the whole thing. So when we get John Gilmore on here, let's put that Defender article back up. Family of Helen Keller opposes bill to deny funding for some nonverbal communication methods, including those used by spellers. This is a bill in New York. It is now in the Senate. It has already passed the Assembly, and a bait and switch happened in the Senate that is so disgusting. Helen Keller's family has come out to talk about how horrific this is and how, they actually talk about how Helen Keller, her voice never would have made it into the world if a bill like this had become law back in the day. Oh, there we go. In city and state, this is being reported on. We also have J.V. Hanley Substacked about this and put this out as well, too. New York Senator Fahy just trampled on the rights of non-speaking autistics. It's really blowing up in Senator Fahy's face in a weird way. She pulled a weird bait and switch. We're going to talk all about it when John comes on. But first, let's check out the video put out by Helen Keller's family about this exact bill. Let's show this.
Our aunt was Helen Keller. Our family felt moved to speak up right now. Helen Keller would be appalled by Senator Fahy's changes to the Communication Bill of Rights in New York. As family members who carry her legacy, we urge New York to restore its original protections for disabled people who communicate differently.
Our aunt, Helen Keller, did not initially communicate independently. She relied on her communication partner, Anne Sullivan. Without Anne's support, the world may have never heard Helen's voice. Today, non-speakers face a similar barrier. For many, communication is not autonomous at first. These amendments risk closing the door that opened Helen's world. How many capable, brilliant individuals might remain unheard if communication access is restricted? How many contributions might be lost? What would the world have lost if Helen Keller never learned to communicate? New York must protect non-speakers' communication rights. Listen to non-speakers. Give them the same chance that Helen Keller was given. Respectfully, Margot Keller and Brooks Hamilton.
Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. We're going to be talking all about the Communication for All Act, what Helen Keller's family had to say about it with John Gilmore. John Gilmore has been a leading force for this bill in Albany for a very long time. He is a leader in the autism community in New York and nationally. And speaking of New York, we're going to do some other updates with John about everything going on in Albany, including Governor Hochul's vaccine power grab. We have an action alert at Children's Health Defense about this. If you have not filled this out yet and you're from New York, you need to do this one. She's trying to completely overstep federal regulatory measures, including the FDA. She doesn't even want a vaccine to be FDA approved, meaning it's experimental, but she could give it to your kids. She could give it to your newborns. And as we looked at this closer, we have another action. New York take action on this one. Hochul's power grab would give her complete control over newborn vaccine schedule through the Commissioner of Health. And what's most important here really is the Hep B shot, and I might say the vitamin K shot as well, too, that are given at birth as standard procedure. this is something that Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s committees in D.C. have been looking at, saying, why are we doing this? Do you need a Hep B shot on day one? And Hochul's trying to take all power away from the federal government to give guidance on any of this. A couple other news items before we bring John on. West Virginia, a federal court, appeals court, upholds West Virginia vaccine mandate, rejects religious exemption for online school. This kid had a religious exemption to attend virtual school. And they said, nope, gotta be vaccinated in your home. There's another case happening in West Virginia in state court that I think is a better position to win. We'll be reporting on that when that happens. That could be in the months ahead. West Virginia, one of the 5 states still struggling with this issue. New York, California, Connecticut, Maine, and West Virginia. West Virginia's pushing back, but still struggling with this issue. In Idaho, some good news. No digital ID. Catherine Austin Fitz, this is a major breakthrough. Other 49 states need to do the same. Big win for Idaho citizens. Senate Bill 1299 gets signed into law. No forced digital ID by government. No government tracking through personal devices. Your rights protected to not use digital ID. Man, it's looking more and more and more like I got to go join my good friend Leslie Manookian and move out to Idaho. Maybe the entire medical freedom movement, the entire freedom-loving movement in America might need to go out to Idaho. Shout out to Idaho for leading the way in so many. I'm getting thumbs up from people behind the scenes right now about this. Support COVID vaccine injured individuals. Tell the CDC to recognize COVID vaccine injuries. Go to childrenshd.org/action. All of our action alerts are there. We've had more than one that we've just put up. Thumb through them and see which ones are appropriate for you. This one's a national one. There is a new code that React 19 wants made official for identifying COVID vaccine injury. This is important. If it happens, they're getting recognition. Something that the vaccine injured for decades have been fighting for. So please go support that. Just a couple more things. We need a reckoning. Jeffrey Tucker, the Heartland Institute, put this out. We need a COVID reckoning, says my dear friend Jeffrey Tucker at the Brownstone Institute. What is this? This is about the COVID justice resolution. COVID justice resolution is about a Senate resolution that would finally bring some recognition to what actually really happened during COVID and some promises to never do it again. We have not had any federal agency or body say we got it wrong and we won't do this again. That's what the COVID justice resolution is about. Jeffrey Tucker authored it. CHD has co-signed this and is pushing this. I'm glad Jeffrey is still pushing this out there. Lastly, also linked to Jeffrey Tucker and the Brownstone Institute, supper clubs. The Brownstone Institute is very, very well known for supper clubs. Tonight, Manhattan, Brownstone Supper Club, April 14th, 2026. John Gilmore at Carmine's from 5:30 to 9 p.m. I'm not sure if there are still tickets for this. $80 includes dinner, plus you get to hear John Gilmore speaking on many, many amazing topics, maybe some of what we're going to be talking about here today as well, too. And without any further ado, we're going to bring on my good friend, president of Autism Action Network, John Gilmore. John, thanks so much for joining us on CHD TV.
Good to be here, Mike. Thanks a lot for having me.
So before we get into all the stuff we have to talk about, you have recently been appointed as a committee member to the IACC. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has appointed you to this committee, and their very first meeting, I believe, is in the next week or so. Tell us just a little bit about this committee.
Sure. The IACC is the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee, and it's a committee to advise the Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., about autism policy. And it's been around for a long time. It's been around for about 25 years, but it hasn't really achieved a whole lot in those 25 years. And we're really hoping that we may be able actually to move things forward a little bit. Everyone knows about how Kennedy basically got rid of everybody on the ACIP, and appointed his own people. He did the exact same thing with the IACC, right? He thanked all the people who have been on it very much for their service, and then appointed his own people, because the people he's appointed are having a very, very different positions on a whole range of issues related to autism, and much more oriented towards a much more, I think, medically oriented, research oriented, aggressive path, to basically take a look at what is really going on biologically with people diagnosed with autism, and come up with ways to hopefully treat that, prevent it, and cure it, which is, believe it or not a position that a lot of people on the IACC have had prior
That's
to this. So it's a real change, which sort of seems hard to believe, you know. In autism, we went away from like treating it as a medical disorder to treating it as a social situation, right? And we're sort of moving back to what it really is. And you can kind of see that. I looked it up the other day. There's about like 70 different uh, uh, awareness months for various medical conditions recognized by the federal government: breast cancer, HIV, all kinds of things. And it's always awareness month, right? Only for autism is it acceptance month.
Oh, that's right.
There's a huge difference, right? I'm all for people accepting people with autism. I have an
Right.
autistic son. That's how I got into all this, right? Yes, accept the people, but to accept autism is a completely different thing.
Mm,
And there was definitely people who've been involved before who basically want to normalize autism. Okay. They want us to believe that
yeah.
it's always been this way. Nothing has ever changed. It's completely normal for a person not to be able to speak, and we really shouldn't worry about it. It's kind of absurd, but that has been the prevailing idea up to this point.
Well,
And
John, I'm really excited that the committee's finally going to have their inaugural meeting. What is the date of the meeting coming up?
it's the 28th.
28th.
It's been scheduled twice before for a variety of reasons. You know, they've both been canceled. You know, nothing with Secretary Kennedy ever happens, you know, in the way it should be happening, because there's just so much resistance to what he wants to do. They know this is change coming, and they just don't want to see change.
Yeah.
But so yeah, a little bit late, but we're finally getting there.
We will definitely have you back on to talk about updates from that when it happens. One thing that's really interesting about the IACC is that some of the impacted individuals themselves are non-speakers,
That's right.
and use spelling boards, use iPads, use a communication partner in
Right.
order to communicate. And you, John, have been a major force for the bill that we opened up. We talked about, some people call it Communication Bill of Rights, some people call it Communication for All. It's in New York. It is watershed. There is the picture there. You're with a whole bunch of amazing people. When this passed on the assembly, a good version of the bill passed in New York.
Right.
Not everybody knows about this history. Take us through the genesis of this bill and then where we're at today with it.
Okay, so this bill kind of originates in the spelling community, or the typing community, it's called. Disabled people who use a spell, a letterboard, or a device, a computer, whatever, to communicate. And this has grown very, very rapidly in the last few years. There's a lot of people, my son included, who finally have a way to communicate, effective way to communicate where they didn't before. And what we're trying to do here in New York is that the federal law in the American with Disabilities Act is pretty good about this. It basically says disabled people have the right to use the communication method that works for them. Okay. A lot of states are resisting this, and New York is one of them. And so what we're trying to do is essentially take that same idea in federal law and put it into state law, right? And so we got the bill introduced in March of last year, and it was kind of amazing the way it worked. We basically just went with spellers and had the spellers meet the legislators, and the spellers basically blew their socks off because
Yeah.
they had no idea that this was possible. I mean, you know, we were there with people who were clearly um, very impacted by autism, but then they were spelling out complete sentences, paragraphs, complicated thoughts. These These are intelligent people trapped in bodies that just do not cooperate with them. And so we kind of went through the assembly at lightning speed. Okay, we were the last bill voted on before they went home for the year, right?
Wow.
And we passed 133-0. Okay, that was great. But you got to get through the state Senate as well. The chair of the Disabilities Committee in the Senate, Patricia Fahy, was also the sponsor of our bill, right? And we passed a beautiful bill in the Assembly. Now, to make a long story short, just recently, Senator Fahy amended her bill that completely changes the meaning of it 180 degrees, okay? It's supposed to be about the disabled person selecting the method to communicate they want to use. The way it's written here, it basically transfers all the power to state agencies and group homes and the institutions that the disabled person has to deal with. They will decide, not the disabled person. That's a complete flip flop, and we're fighting very, very hard to basically get her to agree to move it back to where it was. So there was just a meeting yesterday. There's been a lot of conversations going on. As you know, you saw with the reaction to it has been much stronger than I thought. You know, like with the response from Helen Keller's family, in the media, and so on. One thing that happened is the Senator Fahy tried to pass her version of the bill through her committee, and everybody on the committee was a co-sponsor of the bill. And we got on the phone to those folks and said, "Do not pass this bill. We do not support this," and it didn't go forward. Right?
Wow.
And everybody who co-sponsored said, "We will not vote for this version of the bill." So we're kind of at an impasse here right now, and we're trying to figure out a way forward. I'm hopeful that we can. A lot of work going into it, and when this happens, I'm not going to say if. I'm going to say when this passes, it's going to be a landmark bill. Right?
Yeah.
This will be the first of its kind in the United States, and I think this is going to open up a pathway for many, many disabled people to be able to use a whole variety of communication techniques that works for them, and they have a legal right to do it. So
John,
this is a good thing.
There is a Spellers conference. I believe it's in the fall. That is going to be happening. A lot of people in the community talking about it. CHC is going to have some involvement. Stephanie Lucretio, I was talking to the other day. She's talking to some of the organizers behind the scenes. One mother has a child who is just told in the classroom, your child can't bring their communication board into their classroom to
Right.
communicate. This isn't even adults in a program, in a day
Right.
half, in those,
Right.
which is bad enough. This is mandated juvenile education. And I believe it's in California. They're saying, no, that board has to get out of here. That's viciously cruel. That is insane that is happening. Is that happening across the country? Is that happening everywhere now?
Yes, it is. That's exactly what we're trying to stop. Okay. And that's also a blatant violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Okay. Now, the problem is with the federal law, if push comes to shove, you have to go to federal court, right?
Right.
Which, as you know, is very, very expensive. It takes a very long time to do it, right? Most families can't even dream of doing something like that. It's a little more realistic to go to state court. It's a lot cheaper in most places, and it's a lot faster as well. And then what happens, though, is that if it's actually in state law, okay, schools are really bound mostly by state law rather than federal law. That you gotta before you go to court, you have a leg to stand on. Okay, right here in the law, state law, you got to do this. So stop goofing around and provide what you're supposed to provide and support this way of communicating.
Right. So John, what in New York? So right now, it's taken a national scope because of just how egregious it is, because Helen Keller's family has jumped in. But right now, people in New York are really impacted by this law, but this bill that we want a good version to go through, not the bad version. What can people do in New York right now to help support this effort?
Well, first you can go to the autismactionnetwork.org website. We have action alerts on there where you can find out what the situation is. You can send messages to your elected officials. You can send messages as well to the governor and the people who are in leadership positions as well, and get their phone numbers and get on the phone. Get on the phone to Senator Fahy and say, please change your bill back to the way you had it before, because it was a much better bill. And just keep on communicating. Get on social media, say you want to see this bill move forward in the acceptable way, the way the assembly passed it. By the way, the co-sponsor or the sponsor of the bill in the assembly was Angelo Santa Barbara. He is the father of an adult with autism who is a non-speaker, and so he lives what we're talking about here. And we want basically the Santa Barbara version of the bill. That's A7363, but just Santa Barbara version of the bill is really what we're talking about here, which used to be Fahy's as well. Okay, up into a couple weeks that had her name on it. So please, Senator Fahy, just go back to that great bill you had 2-3 weeks ago, and we'll be really happy.
It's Senator Fahy has a powerful position being head of the Disabilities Committee, and
Yep.
it just reminds you what happens behind the scenes when powerful people come in and say, hey, what are you doing? You don't represent these non-speakers. You represent these powerful interests behind the
Right.
scenes. And she's kind of, naked to the world and just being a shill, where she clearly herself even wanted to, somewhere in her heart, protect
Right.
these non-speakers and do the right thing. And somebody just have to no,
Right.
that's not what you do. And so it's actually quite embarrassing for Senator Fahy,
It is.
I believe.
But I'm optimistic she's going to listen to her better angels and do the right thing and go back to the Santa Barbara bill.
Yeah, and so John, we're talking about communication for all, very important bill, but also just 3 weeks ago now, we were in Albany. We were rallying with Mary Holland, Mark Gorton, Naomi Wolf, all mainly focused around the vaccine power grab that Governor Hochul is attempting to do, which she is trying to decouple from ACIP and CDC guidance in Washington, D.C. Here's the action alert that CHD put out, largely inspired by you, John. You helped us to put this thing together. And right now, I believe there was a Senate version of a bill similar to Hochul's bill that's already passed, but now Hochul's bill is moving through the Senate. In the
Right.
Assembly, I don't think it's moving. Could you give us a little update after our rally? We had over 50 meetings in the Capitol with lawmakers and such. Give us a little update. Where are things at? What should people in New York be watching for, doing, and thinking about now as the budget in New York is over 2 weeks late? Once again,
Right.
give us a little background on Albany politics right now.
Okay, so basically, in response to all the reforms that the Trump administration, Secretary Kennedy, have been putting in place about vaccine policy, a bunch of states are in a panic. New York is one of them. And so they've basically been a whole flurry of bills that they think are going to allow the states basically to do their own vaccine program completely separate from the federal government, right? And New York is one of them. So there was all these bills that basically would say that the state can take its recommendations from any organization it wants. It could ignore the ACIP. They can ignore the FDA. They could come up with their own schedule. Basically, just act completely independently of the federal government, right? And there's a lot of problems with that for many reasons. They want to be able to sell unlicensed or use unlicensed vaccines in the United States. That's a direct violation of federal law, right? And there's things that they haven't considered from their own side, right? The federal government pays for almost all the vaccines. Well, not almost all, but about 2/3 of the vaccines given to kids in the United States is paid for with federal dollars, right? And they won't pay that for vaccines that they don't approve of, right? They haven't thought of that. One thing that's really near and dear to their heart is the liability protection that the federal government gives to vaccine manufacturers and people who administer them, right? That won't be there as well. So I'm sure that, no doctor is going to give a vaccine if they haven't got liability protection. They won't do it, right? So there's a bunch of problems. But what happened is there was a bunch of different bills, and then the governor came down and said, "This is the bill. This is the one I want you to pass," right? And it came in about 2 weeks ago. And fortunately, it came in the middle of the last tail end of the budget. New York was supposed to have a budget on April 1st, which seems such an appropriate day to have it. But they missed the deadline. It looks like the budget battle is going to be going on for a while longer, which is great because the longer they waste on that, the less time they have to do other bad things. And so this bill is really, really kind of consolidates all the ones that I was talking about before, right?
Right.
And this one has not only do they ignore the ACIP, they ignore the FDA, and they also have language in there that you mentioned earlier, is that they're going to give the power to set up the newborn vaccines, right, directly to the governor and her commissioner of health, right? So basically, they want to be able to just dictate without oversight from anybody what kids have to get if they're born in New York, all right? Now, this is going to create a weird situation. It's not exactly going to be a mandate because they have to have a law passed to do that. But it's kind of the way they handle hepatitis B shots and vitamin K shots, okay? You do not legally have to do that in New York and most other states that I'm aware of. However, huge pressure is put on doctors and hospitals, and they put the pressure on the family, and they tell families that if you don't give your kid this vitamin B shot or hepatitis B shot or this vitamin K shot, that's illegal. We're going to call Child Protective Services on you. They're going to take your newborn baby. This happens all the time, right? And this would allow basically the governor to add anything else to that they want.
Wow.
Okay, without any oversight. So
John,
they're probably going to put RSV and others as well.
Well, so we're almost out of time. So you gave a good overview of the bill, but where are we at? We have about 2 months left in the session. The budget fight is happening.
Right.
That does make it harder for this to happen. Where is it at in the Senate? Where is it at in the Assembly? We only have a minute or two. Let's close out on that.
I think this happened really late. Okay, that ends to me. I mean, this should have been waiting for the legislators back in January 1st when they first showed up, right?
John, it happened 2 days after we went and rallied in Albany.
2 days after we were there, right?
Right.
I think this bill is in trouble, and I think it could be stopped. Okay, there's at least half a dozen federal lawsuits waiting on the day that it gets passed. If it gets passed, there's huge problems with it, and I think they're listening because they're not acting quickly on this. Okay, on some of the earlier bills, they slammed it through in a day. Okay, there's been no action on this one yet, right? And so I think what this means, though, is that the more we press, the better our chances are we're going to be able to stop this. And if they really hear from us, we can stop it.
So unfortunately, we're out of time here. In the show notes below, there are 2 action alerts. One, to stop Governor Hochul's vaccine power grab. The second one, to stop her power grab over the newborn vaccine recommendations. If you're in New York, make sure to do those. John, we also had a letter from CHD General Counsel Kim Mack Rosenberg that was sent explaining to the lawmakers why all of this was illegal. You played a big role in helping to draft that. And I
sent it to all of them, too.
Sent it to all the lawmakers. So New York, pay attention. This could be stopped. We will be talking more about this. If we could stop it in New York, that's pretty big. That would be a good thing. John Gilmore, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have you back on soon to go over. Man, you got too many news updates. We got a bunch of news updates we got to go over.
A lot going on.
Thanks coming.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Be well.
Don't go anywhere. Now we want to go into the segment, Stephanie Lucretio, an interview about EMR and wireless harms and how they are impacting the pollinators, how they are impacting the bees. This is very important. Let's go to this.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today to continue our conversation about Earth Month. As you all know, Children's Health Defense and the 704 No More Coalition are highlighting one of the fastest growing and often overlooked environmental exposures, wireless radiation. So as infrastructure expands into communities and natural spaces, concerns are growing about impacts on pollinators, wildlife, and ecosystems. So it's a very timely conversation about environmental stewardship, public health, and the roles communities play in shaping what gets built around them. To help us explore this, I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Rob Brown, who is a diagnostic radiologist with over 35 years of experience. Welcome, Dr. Brown. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
What an important conversation.
Absolutely.
Last time I saw you, we were on stage at the CHD conference, and some of the things that you spoke about really left a mark on my heart and in my mind. So let's just jump right in. There's so much evidence in scientific literature that environmental and wildlife systems are being impacted by radiofrequency radiation and wireless technologies. Give me a little bit of what you've learned in all of the work that you're doing.
Well, our environment, of course, has so many toxins in it at this point, and so many of them are affecting everything from trees and plants to bees, birds, all kinds of insects, animals. Electromagnetic radiation is now becoming one of the most prevalent toxicants. I guess I'd call it a toxicant because it's human generated, and it is having an impact on our wildlife and the biosphere in general, and it seems to be having a synergistic effect with the other forms of toxicity. So whereas we knew that some of the herbicides and pesticides we've been using have had effects on insects, add EMF to that, and you're getting more toxicity than you would have with either one alone.
It's so scary. And, you know, the fact that nobody's connecting these dots and there's so much out there about climate change and all the environmental toxins that are affecting the birds, the bees, and the pollinators. Can you explain a little bit about the mechanics behind how these wireless technologies are impacting the things that we're talking about?
All insects and animals have a magnetic sense. They can sense magnetic fields, us included. And it happens through a molecule called cryptochrome, which is found in the eyes and brains of most insects and vertebrates. And cryptochrome regulates our circadian rhythm. And so when and what that means is that when we're experiencing these cycles of light and dark, that ties us to the Earth's rotation, it ties us to the seasons, it ties us to one another and everything else that's in the environment. And when you start adding other exogenous sources of energy, such as the electromagnetic fields that are generated by our technology, that is affecting the cryptochrome molecule, and it's impacting the circadian rhythm of ourselves, and in addition to our domestic pets, and in addition to wildlife and insects, birds, everything that's exposed to it in the environment, and trees too.
Wow, so crazy. And does this have to do with this concept of resonance that you talk about so often?
Resonance, for people that don't really understand what resonance is, I always go back to sound. And what do we mean when we use that term with sounds? The opera singer goes into a room and there's a wine glass that has a certain frequency to it, and if the opera singer can hit that frequency with her voice, the glass will absorb the sound waves, and if it absorbs enough energy from the sound, it can actually shatter, and we've probably all heard that or seen that as an example. The same thing can happen with electromagnetic fields, and so the resonant frequency is or the resonant wavelength is the wavelength at which there's maximal absorption of energy. So, and as we go from 4G to 5G, these new millimeter wave frequencies, the wavelengths are going up from 2.45, the frequencies are going up from 2.45 gigahertz up to 52 gigahertz, and the wavelength is correspondingly decreasing. So, for example, if you have a wavelength if you have a frequency of 8 gigahertz, for example, the wavelength would be 3.75 centimeters, or about 1.25 inches. If you increase the frequency to 24 gigahertz, now you're your wavelength is about 12.5 millimeters, which is about the size of a honeybee. So if a honeybee is flying and goes through a wave in this 5G network of 24 gigahertz, it's going to maximally absorb the power that's in that wave of energy. If you increase the frequency further to 52 gigahertz, which is another bandwidth in the 5G frequency, now you're at a wavelength of 5.77 millimeters, and that, of course, is about the size of a fly. So again, flies flying in the air that are going from one point to another, they may be fine in one area, but then they go through an area where there's this radiation coming from a 5G antenna, and they can become confused, disoriented. The body can actually absorb enough energy to change the temperature of the insect and affect its health. So that's what's happening now.
I think it's really important to raise a flag to really acknowledge the importance of the birds, the bees, the pollinators. What happens if these creatures cease to exist because of all the wireless radiation that they're now being exposed to?
I think if we lose the insect population and we lose our birds, we're going to lose our human civilization too. I mean, we're all tied together. We need pollinators to pollinate our food. We've all evolved through the production of food that's generated by insects and the pollination of angiosperm, I think is the name of the plants that have male and female sexes to the plants, and so they can germinate and create fruits, and that's what we use to eat. So yeah, without pollination, we're really in dire straits. We need pollinators.
It seems like the more we get, 5G, 4G, 6G, the more we grow, the closer the antennas, the more antennas that we're getting. Can you explain a little bit about why that is and why it becomes ever more increasingly dangerous for these pollinators that we're talking about?
Sure. Well, as we increase the frequencies, so we're going again from 2.45 gigahertz up to 8 gigahertz and higher frequencies. Those waves don't travel quite as far as the lower frequencies do, and so the antennas need to be closer to one another. And we've also been told that those frequencies, they don't penetrate as easily through structures. And when they were first proposing this high density of antennas, they were saying that the frequency was even blocked by rain, which I don't think is actually true, but that's what we were told initially. But anyway, the densification of antennas is because these higher frequencies, they don't travel as far, they become absorbed more easily, and so the need for more antennas. Yeah, and so there's more radiation, there's more sources of radiation, and for our wildlife, it means going from one source to another if they're moving here and there. Our trees, of course, are fixed in place. And so if they're near an antenna, they're being blasted continually without any escape. And you can see in some areas where trees are actually trying to grow away from the antenna as the years go by. The branches that are close to the antenna will die off. The tree will experience something called crown death, and then the tree tries to grow away from the source of radiation.
There was a slide that you showed at the conference, and I remember hearing the gasps of the audience, and it was about a tree. It literally showed a tree that was dead because it was next to a cell tower.
Right, the part of the tree that was growing closer to the antenna died, right? It can take years, and I remember a few years ago I was driving in New Jersey on Route 287, and I came across a whole area of trees where they had crown death, and I looked beyond it, and there was a gigantic antenna with dozens, it was a mast with dozens of antennas on it, and I just thought, oh my goodness, doesn't anybody see what's happening? It was so obvious, and yet people love the technology, and they don't want to do without it, and the industry just keeps expanding.
Rapidly. Way too rapidly. How did we get to a point where environmental considerations aren't even a conversation that's happening when we're talking about where cell towers will be deployed?
I don't know. I'm not sure why the public interest has been taken out of this conversation so definitively. I mean, there are some communities that are fighting back, but in general, this is going on without anybody's real understanding of what's happening to our environment. Yeah, I really don't know. You'd think that the powers that would care too, because we all live on this planet. I mean, I know we just went around the moon and we went to the backside of the moon, but this is our home, and we really need to take care of it. So we can fantasize all we want about building a colony on Mars or wherever, but we live here. So
I suspect that if we did build a colony somewhere in Mars, that we'd figure out a way to ruin it there as well, knowing what I know about the world as it is today.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Wherever we go, there we are. So we have to get to the root of the problem, which is really putting people's health, the environment, over corporate interests and, the profits of these giant conglomerates that seek to make money off of what they're building around us without any consideration for the environment or human health. It's very
true.
concerning.
Yep, I agree.
So, what is your opinion about what communities can do? Because this obviously has become one of the core focal points for CHD as an organization. I know your work with EHT, you've been doing it for a long time as well. Mm-hmm. We need to really start to make some noise around this, because there's a lot of dangerous legislation and regulations that are out there that stand to take away any local voices, any opposition to just having towers deployed in front of your homes, in your schools, your children's playgrounds. What do you think communities can do right now to continue to bring attention to the environmental impacts and all the other things that we know are problematic when it comes to cell towers?
It's a tricky, complicated question. I recently moved to a community where there are very few towers, and most of the people have not been affected by this yet. Believe it or not, there's still places like that exist. And yet they really don't even want to hear about it because it's not an issue. And most people don't start to think about this until it becomes an issue. And then at that point, it's really too late. The time to start combating the deployment or the installation of these towers is before they go up, before the permits have been approved. And it really takes foresight and a knowingness of what's happening in other communities that have been fighting this to really understand what's at stake. So that requires education. It requires, a gentle hand, because you don't want to scare people, and that turns people off. When you just throw something at them and it scares them, they don't want to know, and you don't want to make it seem like, well, if you don't do this, then you're going to be left in the dark ages. So it's really a delicate balance between education and caution and support to try to encourage people to say, we can help you. People have been in your situation. They've been successful in avoiding the installation of a tower on a school, for example, or in a playground. And so there are ways that people and communities can make a difference, but it has to be done in advance of the towers going up. Once the tower is up, it's very, very difficult to get it taken down.
Yeah, we know that all too well here at CHD. We've seen so many communities that their lives have been completely turned upside down by the installation of a tower nearby. It's a really sad reality that many are living in.
Yes.
What has been the biggest progress that you've seen in all the years that you've been doing this work? What gives you hope to think that we can beat the giant industries that seek to profit off of all this infrastructure that's coming up everywhere?
I always go back to cigarettes. What happened with the cigarette industry? And I grew up in a time when if you flew on a plane, you had to walk to go to the bathroom. You passed through the smoking section.
So wild to think about.
You think about that now, and if you had said to me back then, or anybody, oh, well, there'll be a time when you can't even smoke in a restaurant, nobody would have believed you. The cigarette lobby and the industry was so powerful. There, doctors were smoking, and everybody said it was safe, and then secondhand smoke turned out to be so dangerous, and nobody believed that either. And to think that secondhand smoke became so instrumental in creating change, policy change all around the world, really. That gives me hope that this, even though this seems like it's become so entrenched in our society and people seem so glued to their devices, I really think there's hope. I really do. And plus, I have younger children. They're in their 20s now, but they are much less interested in their devices than they used to be, and I think their friends are too. And again, in this community that I just moved to, people are going to the movie theater, and they're talking about the movies together, and they're going out to the coffee shop, and they're engaging with one another. They're not on their phones. They're not on the devices. They are actually socializing with each other, and it's giving me hope that people are starting to see that life with a machine is not a life to be enjoyed.
It is so very true. I saw a meme the other day and it was talking about, remember the show Friends, like what it would look like today if we had a show of Friends. And basically the meme looked like this and everybody was like looking down at their phone.
Yes.
And it's a sad reality. So I think that the awareness that we're raising in our organizations, the work that we're doing, and all the different ways that this technology is impacting not only our planet, our health, but also how we interact as humans is becoming of the utmost importance. So I so appreciate your voice and all the work that you're doing in collaboration with CHD and EHT. Every voice counts, every action matters. How can people follow you, keep up with your work, and stay in touch?
They can sign up for the newsletter at environmentalhealthtrust.org. I also have my own website, robbrownmd.com. And I do have a book that's coming out that's being published by Children's Health Defense and Skyhurst Publishing. It's coming out in June. It'll be called Unplug. It's not an original title per se, but it does get the message across. And I think it's going to help people really understand the science and the implications of what all this technology means for our health and our future, and I encourage everybody to read it.
I so appreciate it, and I know I definitely will be reading it. This issue has definitely set my soul on fire, so I'm so honored to be rolling up my sleeves side by side with you and working with Miriam and the rest of the team to get the word out and make sure that people are activated. So we will definitely have you back once the book is live, and keep us posted if there's anything else. We so appreciate you and your work, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Stephanie. Have a great day.
You too. All right, so you heard it here. So important this Earth Month to step in as a voice for your environment and your community. Start conversations, host a nature walk or a small gathering, and share what you're learning. I find that community engagement is so important, and when you can bring people in and meet them where they are, give them those little nuggets of information and education, it really does make a huge impact. You can educate locally. We have a whole bunch of educational resources on our 704nomore.org website that you can use to educate environmental groups and community leaders. And then be visible. Use our campaign materials to raise awareness in your area. You can amplify the message both in person and sharing our resources, photos, and your voice on social media using hashtag nature is not for sale and hashtag 704nomore. I really believe that together we can truly protect what connects us, our environment, our communities, and future generations. So get involved, have the hard conversations, and know that with everything that you do, you are absolutely planting a seed and creating that more beautiful world that we're looking to build for our children and future generations. So stay active. Feel free to reach out to us here at CHD if you need any help or support. We are here for it all. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning, and I'll be back soon. Have a great day.
Tell us your name.
Alegra Acosta Young.
And this is about your wife. There's a picture here.
Yes.
And that's your little girl. And you say they killed her.
Yes.
All right, tell us what happened.
She was sick in November of 2021.
Did you get the COVID vaccine?
No, we didn't want to be the first in line for it. We were not in a hurry to get it. They were encouraging her from her job to get it, and they were incentivizing her, and we were doing research. At that time, that's when our area of where we live in Tucson, it became a hot zone. In the news, they told us it was a hot zone for the Omicron strain of COVID going around. Eventually, she got sick, I believe, going to and from work because I worked from home. And she became sick. Went to the urgent care. They sent her home with a paper, told her she had to quarantine for 14 days. She notified her employer. 2 days after she went into the urgent care, which was about the 17th of November, she couldn't take it no more. She had to go into the hospital. She had spent the whole night not being able to breathe. And I took her to the hospital. It was about 5 in the morning. By the 19th of November, they had diagnosed her with COVID and told us and asked her if she was vaccinated. So, of course, she called me in over the phone through FaceTime video. She asked me, I'm not vaccinated, right? No, we're not vaccinated. Well, they're telling me, there's nothing they could do for me. And there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do. I said, you can't get the vaccine anymore? She said, no. The nurse that was right there told us no, that it wasn't available for her. What they did tell us was available was a medicine that was in shortage. And basically, if we didn't, kind of get on with whatever they're doing, that she wouldn't be able to get any of that medicine. And of course, we asked the name. The lady told us, well, we're going to give you a paper and it's going to have all the information on it. I said, well, take a picture of that information and send it to me. We communicated a lot back and forth through text. And as the days went on, I was, of course, sick as well. I was sick, and so she began the medication. I was texting her, did you start the medication? Did they give you the information for the medication? Because I wanted to know what was the medication. In my mind, I thought it was ivermectin, because in the media, that's what I heard was ivermectin was deadly and this and that. So I was looking out for ivermectin. I didn't know nothing about remdesivir. And so she's texting me, yes, they gave me it. I said, what's the name of it? She said, I don't know. I said, well, I need to know the name. We need to, watch out for any side effects of the drug. Eventually, I was sick. I ended up in the hospital about 2 or 3 days later. So from there, being sick for the 2 or 3 days, I was sick for 8 days in the hospital. I was given remdesivir for 5 days. For the 5 days that I was given remdesivir, I went into kidney failure. They began to give me insulin. By the grace of God, I got out of there. Hello? Do you watching everything? We're live on TV. Remember, we do live at home? Yeah? You want your little Conchita? This is her daughter. So yeah, I was given remdesivir for the 5 days, went into kidney failure. Somehow I managed to get out of the hospital. From the standard of care that they were giving, there was nobody going in to check on us.
It's okay, and I'm for
Okay. Okay. And so she's gonna be the most memorable person, I think. Hey, okay. So from there, you don't want to go ride your scooter? Okay, well, we're not gonna ride it much for later. So it was just a difficult time. She was also with us at one point at the hospital. They told us they didn't have a unit we were at for children. So they were trying to tell me, we're going to have to transfer you, or no, we can't transfer you. Do you have anybody that can pick her up, or she's going to end up in foster care? We were scrambling to find somebody for her. Found a friend finally. I got out of the hospital about November 29th. I wasn't out for the night. I think I was out for 1 day of the hospital. And the very next day, I had just talked to Evangeline. She was fine. She was feeling good. Everything was going good. In the middle of the night, she had a turn for the worse. That's what they told me. And she was placed on a ventilator. From there, the contact with the hospital kind of went to zero. Like, I couldn't get a hold of anybody. I was calling every day. Still being sick out of hospital with remdesivir. My hair was falling out. I could barely walk. I could barely breathe on an oxygen tank. calling every day to try to figure out what was going on with her. And they really gaslighted us. They told us she's in stable condition. Before all that happened, they had already been sedating her. They had already been sedating her. They had already been giving her medication to keep her down because she was fighting them. She was fighting them. At one point when I was in the hospital, I was hearing her fight them. And so, like I said, we were throwing texts back and forth through all of this. So when she was on the ventilator, like I said, they stopped really communicating with us. They began to gaslight us, tell us, oh, she's in stable condition. She's not doing bad, she's not doing good. Then they wouldn't talk to me. Then they would tell me, well, are you really married to her? Are you her wife? Are you legally married? They would talk to her mom. They wouldn't talk to her mom. Her mom would call me. Her mom would tell me, did you tell them not to talk to me because they're not letting me know what's going on? Her mom was also calling every day, and it just went on for the days that she was there remaining. They were able to kill her in 23 days. She ended up getting MRSA, and I believe it went untreated. On the 11th of December, called me 8 o'clock in the morning that she wasn't going to make it anymore. So I was like, what do you mean? Well, what do you want us to do? I said, well, you have to do whatever you have to do to bring her back, Got to the hospital. She was already gone. I was scared. And I wanted to leave her daughter alone. So I wanted to do the right thing. And when it was time, I thought it was time. I thought it was a good time. I went and I got my first vaccine. I was still sick, so I couldn't really tell the difference. I was just still sick from remdesivir, from everything that they were giving me, insulin, all these different drugs they were giving me. I didn't even know, And so all the different things that they were giving us, I was really sick after that first shot. And then they said, well, come back for your second shot. Oh, man, I went back for my second shot, and it was like I was hit by a bus, dragged by a train. I couldn't get out of bed. And I had this little girl, she's depending on me to take care of her because her mom wasn't around anymore. And in that little short period of time, we lost everything. I had to move out of where I lived. I had to find somewhere else to live all by myself. I have friends and family to help, but the person that should have been here is her. And after learning about ivermectin and learning all the lies that they told, all I've ever wanted was answers for what happened to her, because we never got that final last words from her. And so that's pretty much, my story.
Did you get Pfizer or Moderna?
I got Pfizer, 2 Pfizers.
And what are the symptoms you're getting?
It began with my menstrual cycle. I lost it for 3 months. I also major body pain and aches with fever. It was that first initial day I couldn't really even get out of bed after I went and got the shot. I think I slept for the whole night and I didn't wake up until the morning. Luckily, she was still a baby, so she did sleep a lot in the beginning, and that's how I managed, was to keep her in bed with me and, feed her in bed, get her into the bed with me. My arm where I got it, I still have a lot of tension and soreness. Other things that happened were I couldn't talk, I couldn't breathe, like just this part of my throat. I was having vertigo, dizziness, ringing in my ears. It was just one thing after another until I learned about ivermectin. And I began to take the ivermectin, and the ivermectin began to take it away. Because I was, like I said, I was in kidney failure for about a year. And for a good year, yeah, I didn't want to go back to the doctor. I was scared. I didn't know if this is what they were doing to everybody. I didn't know if it was just because in the beginning I thought maybe because we were gay and married that they chose this. I learned differently, of course. So I really thought that was in the beginning, maybe that's why they picked her. I didn't know why. Just so many questions in my head. A lot of things didn't add up, especially when I was there and I seen the poor treatment, the lack of food, the lack of water. And she was telling me all the time she was hungry. I'm hungry, I haven't eaten. I'm hungry, I haven't eaten. When I finally did get into the doctor last year, they told me you have to get on insulin. You have to do this, you have to do that. And I just was like, well, what is this a cost from? Was on remdesivir. I've been 2 shots of the vaccine. Oh, well, they never really want to recognize, in the doctor's office when you're going, you tell me you're sick from this stuff. They don't want to recognize that they've done this to you, right? They don't want to say, oh, well, yeah, you're right, And so I just was determined to go out of my way to make sure that I found every other alternative to taking their drugs. And I have. I found other medicines, I found other treatments, and I'm off of insulin now. I'm off of insulin. I don't want to be on their drugs anymore.
Good for you. What about your daughter?
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand the danger of vaccination?
Yeah, she doesn't have no vaccinations, and I kind of get a lot of scrutiny from a lot of people. The family that does exist in Evangeline's family, they don't understand why I don't do it because, they've all gotten them and they're all sick, but, I have to think about her because what about school? And, I've thought about all of those alternatives, and my alternative is I'm going to have to teach her myself. I'm going to have to take that into my hands. I'm going to have to put her in my own kind of school because I'm not going to give her any shots. I'm not. And she's been healthier for that. You see her. She's as healthy as can be. We just are done being sick, and she was only 2 days sick, and I treated us with the same medications that I treat us, and we're fine. This just proves to me more that Evangeline didn't have to die, because I was able to treat this at home by myself without a doctor. I'm able to treat her at home when she's sick without a doctor.
Do you have a picture that we can put her up on the bus?
Oh, you can have this one. Yeah, this is just a copy anyway, but...
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.